Welcome to Leadership, the Secret Sauce, the podcast where we talk to extraordinary coaches and leaders to dive into the realms of leadership and coaching. We're your hosts, Dave Lipsky and Matt Dodson. So let's jump in with another guest and find out their answer to the question, what is your secret sauce? All right, before we begin, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Character Matters Coaching and Consulting, where they believe that your character is the compass guiding you through life's journey. Whether you're facing personal or professional challenges, they are dedicated to helping you discover and strengthen the core values that define who you are. Dave, who do we have on the podcast today?
I would like to welcome Don. And Don, I had complimented you on the plants in your background. I absolutely love the energy and the life coming from the camera. And I wanted to start out asking you, what is your energy level on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being low, 10 being high?
I would say I'm pretty consistently at an 8 or a 9.
Great. What has you at the 8 or 9 today?
Well, I'm just coming off of a number of meetings with different clients, and I actually find, strangely enough, being as high on the introvert scale as a person can be, I find myself actually really energized by the experience and process of coaching with people. I find I have more energy when I'm done at the end of the day than I might have started with even.
Yeah, this is very cool. I'm so interested in asking, how is that energy connected to purpose?
I think it's absolutely 100% connected to purpose. I feel like when I'm in the flow and I'm doing the thing that I feel like I'm meant to be doing and making the contributions I'm here to make, then it doesn't feel like work. It just actually gives me energy and gets me more excited.
When you are riding the rails of Pennsylvania and somebody turns to you on a train and says, Don, what do you do? How do you describe it?
I'll give you the answer that I use most often. And at the risk of sounding like a little grandiose, I say, I change lives. That's what I do. That's kind of the phrase that I use. And of course, I have friends that make fun of me and said, oh, are you changing lives today? And kind of give me a hard time. But I really do feel like that's part of what we do. We actually get such a unique opportunity to step into someone's world and help them do something that sort of propels them along in their journey. And I think that's just pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, that's spot on. 100%.
I love that. Matt was going to ask, and I'm going to ask before he says it.
Sure.
And how can you change my life? If the person then asks.
Yeah.
Well, the question I would ask them is, how do you want your life to change?
That's great.
Yeah. One of the things I discovered about myself as a coach, again, being high on the introvert scale and also being like a master at preparing. So, if there was an island of people who prepare, I could probably be their king. And what I found that as a coach, I had to put all of that aside because it's really not my agenda. It's not about me. And I've got to be willing to go in whatever direction someone might want or need to go, regardless of what my own personal inside voice might be telling me.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, Don, what, one of the things that Dave and I started this podcast so we could spend time with other coaches. That's our big deal. And one of the ways that we do that is just to ask other coaches, what is your secret sauce? What makes you as a coach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So many things because I'm so spectacular, but I guess the thing, seriously, well, obviously I like to have fun. I like to laugh and I like to it doesn't have to be an onerous sort of really challenging process. But I think the thing that allows me to do what I do sort of at the level that I'm able to do it is I don't claim this is a skill I've learned. It's sort of an innate ability where I can meet someone where they are. And it's really easy for me somehow, surprisingly, it was actually a surprise as I got into coaching that I realized I could do this. I can suspend my own feelings and judgment around whatever the other person might be bringing up. Because there are certainly times when I might be, working with someone and they might have beliefs and ideas that are very different than my own. And sort of my ability to keep those over here and out of the conversation, I think allows me to sort of really just meet them right where they are rather than trying to get them somewhere or, change an opinion or just not showing up as my best self because of something someone might say that, pushes a button for me. And just being able to not have that impact the coaching experience, I think is probably what I would call my secret sauce.
And then when did you know that? Like, when did you first, like, give us a little bit of your story? Like, how did you?
I mean, I think I'm still figuring it out. I think it's something that I'm still kind of unwrapping. But I would say probably, I started coaching full time in 2019. So I'm, 6 years in. I would say probably about halfway through that I started noticing it, because when I first started coaching, of course, I come from 30 years of having my own leadership experience and whatnot out in the world. There were so many things I had to unlearn and unwind to be able to do this work in the way that I feel like it needs to be done. And what I found was that in the beginning, I could maybe have, talking about energy that David brought up, I would be exhausted after every session. Felt like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. And then at some point it started to change because I stopped trying so hard. And rather than me trying to be something for someone, I showed up where they were and then, pulled together whatever I had on board with me, not prepared, in sort of a contrived way. And that's what I bring to the conversation. And I found that worked really well. And it started to show me that, this is interesting in sort of the way that I show up in a coaching conversation versus the way I might show up in an executive team meeting or a board meeting in prior lives. Very different.
Yeah, that's really, it's almost, I know you and I have talked about this before, Don, but just sort of allowing some of this stuff as a coach to come to you rather than forcing yourself into the situation. Yeah.
And really not forcing the other person into anything. That, again, I felt that resistance in the first months coaching, where of course I can see what they should be doing and wanting to sort of make that happen or bring them to that, and realizing that, it's just not my party. And that's just not the right way to do this work.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, as you were describing that, I'm picturing myself on the client side with you as my coach, Don. And I'm thinking, how would I experience that? How would I experience you meeting me where I am?
Yeah. Let me think of like some tactical examples of things that I've gotten feedback on. Something that I think I do well is I sort of create a space that feels comfortable. It doesn't feel intimidating. There's not any sort of unnecessary or unusual pressure. I think that sort of just being able to show up that way and create that space really quickly with people. I think often people will say, I'm really surprised at how deep we went or how much we got into so quickly. And I think part of it is just not me trying to force it down a certain path, but just letting it go. I think also that I've just become a really good listener. And not something I would have said now based on my understanding of what good listening looks like. I would not have said I was. I would have been the listening to fix guy. I would have been like trying to fix your problem. And when I first started coaching, I was that guy, and not the right place for me to show up from. And I've gotten to be, I still feel like my lifelong lessons is patience. And this work has taught me patience. It teaches it to me every day in new ways.
Yeah. And I get that. Well, just to sort of say, like, Don is my coach, and I will say I feel very safe coming to you. Like, I'll bring up other things and I'll be like, I'm just going to say this. I wrote it down and I felt the courage to say something. So you do, I have actual experience where it feels very safe to bring that stuff to you as a coach. There's something about it that, that is your secret sauce, where you feel like, yeah, I'm going to put it out there and see what happens. So
all right, Matt.
Experience, yeah.
So
yeah.
we'll turn the interview on Matt for a second. So Matt, safe, not safe. What's the difference? Like, as you talk to Don, what is different for you?
Okay. You mean with Don?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's in the prep when I think about things that I want to bring to him, like that I'm bringing the agenda. And I know that no matter what sort of place it's in, I'm just going to bring it. And then, who knows where the conversation goes. But I find that willingness to sort of show up with a coach that's really listening and asking good questions, that I get an insight that I didn't have prior to. So I'm always grateful that I thought, okay, I'm going to bring up that. I mean, it just happened the other day. Like Don and I had a session Tuesday,
Yeah.
Wednesday, and I was just like, okay, I'm going to bring this up because this is what's going on for me as a leader, as a coach, as someone who has my own coaching business. I'm just going to bring it up and see what happens, because I felt like not just the past experiences. I think the first time that I wouldn't say it's a vibe. It's a knowing over the past several months that I could weigh into those hard topics with him, and it would be okay. So how's that, Don? Is that good feedback for you? Or
No, that is good, and thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. And part of it too is that maybe this idea of suspending the judgment side of things. So it's not about saying that someone, the way they're feeling, is right or wrong or bad or good. It's just about, let's explore that. Let's see what that means to you, and whatever insights come up. Let's go fishing, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, I like that because you spent many years as an executive, Don, and like you, as an executive, you need to come in with agendas and move things forward, right? And then you had to let go of something to be able to just do what you just described, and kind of meeting Matt where he is. What did you have to let go of? What's different?
Oh my goodness. Well, let me say, I think what I had to do was I had to remove all of the layers that I had built up based on what I either believed or was taught or whatever over the course of my leadership career I needed to do to be successful. So what I found is that when I peeled all of those things away, like being overly directive or being, type A and commanding, and even just slowing down the volume, lowering the volume of my voice and spending a little bit more time listening and less time speaking, and slowing down and choosing my words more carefully. All of those little nuances I wouldn't have paid any mind to. I would say when I was sort of in those more, at that sea level, I would have been I would have probably thought, well, I'm in charge. I have to make this happen. So whatever I need to do to make that work is what I'm going to do. And what I find now is that by pulling all of those artificial constructs away, I can just be myself. And I find that actually maybe that's why I have more energy. I'm not putting so much energy into this armor, to steal from Brene Brown's metaphor. Like I just don't need to do that anymore. And not having that, and I think people can sense that when folks have that, and it creates a barrier that I really don't want to have when I'm working with someone.
Yeah, one of the challenges that I face is when an executive brings in that armor to a session, and how I meet that, and how I gently ask them, you could hang up the armor on that hook. How does that work? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the, maybe I'll answer it I'll hit it, but maybe a little obliquely. One of the things that I get with executives in particular is they get told, you need to work on your executive presence. Like, you need to work on that. That needs to be a focus. And I can remember being told those things myself, and I'm kind of like, I don't know what that means. That feels like, like work on your communication skills. It just feels really big and high level, and I'm not sure what that means. So what I'll do with someone is I'll ask them, how do you want people to perceive you? Because everything you do gets filtered through the lens of how someone sees you. And, what words would they use to describe you? And then what words would you like them to use to describe you? Because often with leaders, we'll do a 360 or some other instrument that gives us some data that helps us understand like what people might think of them now. And I try to take it down to the behaviors and talk about, well, what behaviors might be leading for people to think that you're really aggressive, or overly assertive or condescending or dismissive or whatever that, if there's a negative word, whatever that, or if there's a positive word, what behaviors are contributing to that, and helping them understand like what their behaviors turn into, and sometimes even offering my own observations based on what I'm seeing in the meeting, and saying, well, one thing I might, if you don't mind, I'm going to point out, this is what I'm experiencing in talking with you. And I've had to say some really direct things. And I also try to match someone's energy. So if someone is, very type A, really direct, then I'm going to give them sort of that same type of experience because that's what they resonate with. And I mean, I've said some tough things that afterward I'm like, ooh, I don't know. I don't know if I should have said that or whatnot. But what I found is that sometimes if you sort of, again, if I'm meeting them with that same sort of energy, then that tends to be when those moments happen. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. Don, what would you want?
Totally.
What would you want from a coach, given that?
Oh my, I've had my own coach for a long time. And I have to say, the thing that I appreciate most about, for me, for having a coach, is someone who's going to challenge me. And because I'm certainly a creature of habit, and I can get set in my ways and get stuck in situations that aren't great for me or for the people that I'm in it with, but not necessarily being able to recognize that, and having someone who's going to challenge me, that I find to be really helpful.
Yeah, it reminds me of that sort of Rich Litvin sort of, where he talks about you could go out to a lamppost and tell the lamppost every day your problems, and it would be very helpful just for you. But having a coach comment on what you share with the lamppost is worlds apart.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
It really is. And I appreciate someone who's a little more directive and to the point. For me personally, like for my own growth and development, like sometimes I need that very direct, to the point, don't sugarcoat it, so that I actually get the message.
Yeah, I think I think O'Neill talks about backbone and heart, right? And people describe it differently. And I think I am more naturally heart, and I need to insert backbone. And I think there's a relationship between my ability to do that and the results I get, especially with senior level folks. Do you find like there is a connection between how challenging you are and the results you get?
Absolutely. I mean, there's certainly been people that I've worked with that, particularly in the beginning, where I feel like I'm just not getting through here. And what I found is that for those types of, like for that, think of like a senior leader, like think of a certain like stereotype of that very type A commanding sort of style. I was being too nice and too circumspect. I can remember the day that I said to someone, and this might sound terrible to the coaching community, so pre-apologize. I said, well, like David, I have to tell you, I wouldn't hire you. Like saying something that direct, and I can remember the moment that this person, I mean, very, very confident, very, very confident, and they kind of stopped, and then there was this really long pause, probably the longest pause I'd ever heard from them, and then we were able to actually get into, okay, let's talk more about that. But if I hadn't said that as directly and sort of to the point, I'm not sure we would have gotten there. And I learned that of course, it's like any tool, you want to use it judiciously and in the right circumstance and with the right kind of person. But I have found, numbers of times where I've had to sort of take that approach. And what I found is the more tools I have in my toolbox, then depending on where that person is and what they might need in the moment, I'm able to pull that out and be a little more flexible. And also realize that, and this goes back to something that, I learned as a manager very, very long ago about giving people feedback. Me being comfortable, it's really not a requirement. There's information that I believe I have that I believe you need. And I need to give that to you in the way that you're going to hear it, or it doesn't help anyone. Like we're just sort of wasting our breath.
Yeah, I love that. I just said to my wife, I can go out and fix the sprinkler, and she said she wouldn't hire me. So I feel it. I feel it almost directly. I think.
Yeah.
On the other
Wait,
side.
wait, Dave,
Go
before
ahead.
you jump
Yes.
into that, I want to tell you just this is my personal experience. I think I probably after our session recently, Dawn, maybe it was even this week, I said, "Well, this is what Coach Dawn told me," and she said, "Yeah, I've been telling you that for years, but how come you don't listen?"
I hear that all the time from
And I'm
clients.
just like, "Well, it just came from a different source."
Yeah. I hear it
Anyway,
all the time from people that their partners or friends say they've been telling them that. But again, right person, right moment, right way of saying it.
context, yeah,
It matters.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
this concept of a former mentor taught me finished files of like once you're with somebody long enough, it's like a finished file. You can no longer hear anything new. There's nothing new in the file. I love that. So on the other side, right, as like I love that challenge, right? I wouldn't hire you. And then the other side of like, all right, I got to balance out support. How do you bring that level of support, or and do you need to focus on it?
I mean, so I think you're talking about the other side of the spectrum, right?
Yeah, yeah, from backbone to heart.
Yeah. I mean, so one thing that I've learned about myself too is I am actually hyper empathetic. So I find that I'm really hypersensitive to what's going on mood wise, emotionally for someone, which I think also allows me to know where I need to go, whether it's backbone, heart, something in between. So what I find is that, again, I think with that side of things, when people need support, more often than not, the thing they most need is someone just to listen. And it's funny when I work with groups, I always tell them when I'm asking for them to contribute, I promise that I can outweigh you in the awkward silence. So when I ask people for ideas and thoughts, because I've actually learned to not be uncomfortable with that anymore. And in the beginning, it made my skin crawl. Like, oh my gosh, no one's talking. I feel like I have to say something. Now it doesn't bother me at all. And sometimes people just need a little bit of space. And I mean, the other side of that, if you go to even a further extreme, and I certainly see a lot of that with folks. Sometimes people actually need other modalities to help support them with certain kinds of issues and certain things. And I've gotten pretty comfortable with bringing those things up and giving them suggestions of other types of resources that they might consider exploring, whether that be a therapist or a medical doctor or something else that can help them with something that I'm just really not qualified to help them with.
Don, what are a few resources that you would recommend as a coach for other coaches, or three that you really like? Yeah.
I mean, there's so many resources that I recommend to folks. I'll give you my favorite one that always gets the same reaction. And oftentimes people will be dealing with someone really challenging in their life or their environment. And there's a book that I love called Talking to Crazy. And the title always kind of takes people by surprise, by Marshall Goldson. And I actually found this to be one of the most powerful books that I could actually recommend to someone for when they're dealing with that. Because what I love about it is it talks about, I call them the peripheral personalities, like the people that would do things in situations that I wouldn't do, that, maybe have a different moral code or ethical standard. And what it does is it talks about, well, this is what you might want to do, but that doesn't work. Here are some very specific actionable things that you can do. And for example, like an overly used term, narcissists, people like that, it actually talks about people that don't necessarily care about you and don't necessarily have the same conscience binding their choices that you might. Well, here's how you can actually work with them if you have to, because all of these other things you're going to try rationally are just not going to work. So I like that. I find that I'm an action-oriented kind of person. I like to give people resources that are very actionable. So I tend to like books and resources and videos that are either actionable, like that's a good one. I think also like Radical Candor in the communication side, a great book as well, with also lots of other resources in that space. And then I think there's the other side of resources, which is about helping someone find some awareness. And I mean, there's a couple of books that I love. One's Unmasked, for someone who might be struggling with neurodiversity and how they fit in. There's The Highly Sensitive Person. That's another great resource that helps people understand maybe a little bit more about themselves in a context that doesn't feel like it's a negative thing. Like they're just trying to explain, like, this is sort of how things are for you. And here's what this may or may not mean. And it's not about judging it. So I tend to like books and resources like that. I'm a big book person. I'm always reading or listening to something. I love audiobooks. So you'll always find me listening as I'm washing the car or walking the dog, like all those things. I tend to always have something like that, because what I found is that all of that is sort of like feeding information into this giant lake of data that I imagine sitting in my brain. Clearly an old technology guy here, but that the more data and information I have, what I find is that brings me more pieces that I can pull together into a conversation with someone and, help them either get an awareness or give them a resource or whatever it is it might be. So long answer, Matt, for your question. Hopefully that gives you a couple of ideas of things I like.
That's good. Yeah, really good. Dave, what's your reflection on?
My reflection is one, I really appreciate your energy, Don, and the importance of being direct and challenging is something that I try to impart in newer coaching students, and it's challenging, right? It's like how do you talk to power is very interesting, and I think some of the secret sauces that you had mentioned is part of it is like a skill is awkward silence, right? A skill is being able to challenge them at the use of self, like those deeper reactions. So I really appreciate like you emphasizing that.
Yeah. Nothing will drive the type A crazier than that. They don't care for the awkward silence.
Are we done yet? Are we done yet?
Yep,
Oh,
yep,
okay.
Yep.
And I think my reflection, Don, you show up as someone that I know has coached a lot of people over many, many hours, and it shows like in your response. And that's what I just appreciate about, I can just see your mind going to all of the myriad of coaching conversations in order to really talk about, the difference between however you respond to people. And so that was sort of for me, like, one, I get to see you as, between you and I, you're my coach. And, but I know you have thousands of conversations in your coaching experience. And for some reason, it really kind of dawned on me like, oh man, 6 years, the volume of coaching that you've done in 6 years is really amazing. And it's to be admired and respected. And you've really put in the work, and you've taught me things like, if you're a coach, and this is to our audience, if you're a coach now and you're continually coaching, in a year from now, you'll even be a even better coach in a year.
Oh yeah.
And just the idea also, you had mentioned something just about this, like you're building up the strength and to listen better. And that shows me that is something that you can learn, and you will have more stamina as you continue to do it, to listen better and longer. So anyway, that was my reflection. Thanks for coming on the podcast with us.
No, you're right. And one last thing I'll throw out there, Matt, just in response to what you were saying. I'm a better coach today than I was yesterday, than I was a year ago, because I learn new things every day about myself, about the people that I'm working with, about the kinds of things I might be able to help them with, and the different ways we can help them. And that is also part of the joy of this work, is that it's never the same. It's always different, and I'm always growing. And I appreciate that, because that's a need that I have as a person.
Yeah. Yeah. Don, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you? What, do you have a website or LinkedIn? What's the best way people can get in touch with you?
Well, I mean, they can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me at my website, which is just my name, www.doneash.com. And always happy to have a conversation with someone to see how I might be able to support them.
Yeah, really good. Dave, any other thoughts?
Shout out to our sponsor. Are you feeling stuck or overwhelmed? Character Matters Coaching and Consulting provides leadership coaching and consulting to empower you to overcome obstacles and reach your full potential. Visit charactermatterscoaching.com to learn more about their transformative coaching, and how to get connected to Matt for your organization. Don, I so appreciate getting a chance to talk to you. And my last thought is the plants 6 years ago were just seedlings around you, and your coaching has helped them grow over the last 6 years.
I love it. I love a good metaphor or an analogy, I can tell you. So thank you, David.
Just throwing seeds out. Just throwing seeds out.
Zinnias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Way to go. Thanks, Don.
You're very welcome. Thanks, gentlemen. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks. Thanks for listening. If you love this podcast, please share it with another coach or leader. Make sure you go to the show notes to get all the resources from today's episode.